Everyone is welcome here, it's time to make new friends. Fill your Glencairn. Share a dram with the spirit of Edmonton.
Slancha. And good evening, whiskey brothers, sisters, and friends, and welcome to episode 72 of the Canadian Whisky Journey's Whiskey Review. I'm Dolph. I'm the creator of the Canadian Whisky Journey, president of the Alberta Scotch Society, and I'm your host tonight. We're continuing our Canadian Whisky Journey with another installment of the Banff Whiskey Experience Preview Series. So this is a mini-series that focuses on the distilleries that will definitely be part of my masterclass or the panel discussion that I'll be mediating. And let's just show some pics of that really quickly. I'll do that. Excuse me, right there. So there's the Banff Whiskey Experience. It's back. December 1-2. Looking forward to it. And that's the masterclass we're doing. So let's get rid of my little thing so you can actually read that on this. Get rid of that. Boom. There we go. Alberta Bound, deep connection with Alberta craft whiskey. And everyone coming that day is going to have a fantastic whiskey, something I've been looking forward to. So a cast strength, something we've seen, maybe not seen, maybe coming out, never see. Who knows? It's going to be an experience. So gentlemen, how you doing tonight?
Awesome.
Excellent.
And Charlie, we got Charlie down there. We've got a little, so let's make him large. We're going to make you large. So here's Charlie. And do you have anything in the glass tonight there, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm drinking some Alliance number 1.
Alliance number
first Alliance that we did.
All right, and is that the 56.6?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so that's the one I've got. Good. And let's throw Garrett up there and see. And what do you have, or do you have anything in your glass, kind sir?
I do. I didn't pour any Grain Henge tonight. I'm exploring the Forager right now.
Forager. Excellent. Mm-hmm. Well, I've got Grain Henge. I've got 4 of them. I've got, here, let's do this. Here's the first one. So this is release number 1, Elevator Row. And I've got 4 drams. It's fantastic. I'm so happy for Meaning Creek. So this is number 2. So release number 2. And then I've got Alliance, and that's the one that you have in yours, the 56.6. And I've also got this one, and you're gonna have to remind me if we had this in Edmonton or not, the Arrowwood. So that's a 46.6. So 4 whiskeys we have. We're going to talk more about your history than the whiskeys, but we're going to get to the whiskeys pretty soon, and before I drink them all. So that'd be a good idea, I think, in that case. Sirs, here's Charlie. Let's start with you, buddy. Just a little background, if we could. Information on you, what you did prior to becoming a beer and then whiskey entrepreneur, maybe where you went to school, anything like that that kind of leads you to this point in time.
Sure. So I guess I started my professional career as an accountant, a chartered accountant. And as all good chartered accountants know, that profession ultimately leads you to drinking. Yep. So I thought, hey, if I'm already doing it, I might as well make a job out of it. So various entrepreneurial ventures led me to a point that I was kind of looking for a new adventure. And in December 2013, the government at the time changed the laws, so it was a lot easier to start a brewery in Alberta. And so my brother and I went out ice fishing one day, and he said to me, hey, yeah, we should start a brewery. And I said, that's a fantastic idea. And of course, you never really know if it's a good idea or not until the next morning. You've let it sit in for a little while. But one thing led to another, and we were actually up and running in our garage as a licensed brewery. Just about a year after that. But before we sold anything out of the garage, we decided that, maybe we should do this a little different. And we got a real location in Red Deer, and we opened our brewery in June 12, 2015. And thankfully, best decision we made is we brought Garrett on from day one. So he's been around since the very beginning. And just, being inspired by the beverages we make and excited about the different combinations of what malt, Alberta's world-class malt can do, got us into whiskey. And that's kind of how we got into the whiskey.
Nice. And we're gonna become a little bit pokey with the information. I want a little bit more a little bit later, but I'm gonna get Garrett's feet on this. And Garrett, just quick introduction from you, kind sir. So did you go to Olds College, train there, or did you go somewhere else?
I did train at Olds College. I was part of the first intake of students when the program was brand new at Olds College.
Okay. And was this your first gig then? Right off
It
the bat?
was. I graduated from Olds College, and 2 days later, I was working at Troubled Monk. So
2 days.
He was putting the brew house together. And if he wasn't there, it wouldn't look like a brew house. It would look like something different than that.
Nice. Are you a Red Deer boy as well, Garrett?
I actually graduated in Ponoka, so just in between Red Deer and Edmonton.
Charlie, are you Red Deer homegrown?
Yeah. Red Deer. Yeah.
Perfect. And
All the way. Red Deer Rebels.
Red Deer Rebels. Let's go Rebels.
Catch you for the Oilers.
Here for them than the Oilers or the Flames right now. That's pretty bad. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put on your introductory video because I really do like this video and really well made. So I have a couple questions about the video itself and who made it and the idea and everything in a second. So let's just put this on now.
Each small batch is an expression of the artistry and the deliberation exercised at every stage. It is more than the combination of grain, wood, water, and time. It is the prairies and the people who live and work upon them. It is the grand sum of it all that cannot be explained. It must be experienced and enjoyed. Whiskey begins in the field with the grain grown by the farmers. Once they harvest it, they deliver it to maltsters who produce the malt that we use for our product. Once we have the malt, we mash it in our brew house and boil it and then ferment it with yeast. Once we've got some alcohol developed there, we can put that into the still and we double distill our whiskey before putting it into the oak barrels and allowing it to mature until it's ready. Henge is a celebration of mysterious synergies created when people and ingredients are brought together with curiosity and consideration.
Good job on the video, guys. That looks good. It's very powerful music in the background. I feel like someone should be screaming something with a sword maybe up there as well. Garrett, you look good with the beard. I like the beard look more. You look more like a brewer distiller right now. It's
a little older, but yeah.
So when was that one made? Am I guessing 3-4 years ago?
I think only 2 years ago.
2 years ago? So that beard's 2 years old? Oh.
Yeah.
In November, I can get nothing. By the end of November, I maybe have something here. And there's my buddy Richard at my work. With November, he waits till the last weekend. He surpasses me in 1 week with what I do in the whole month. It's embarrassing. But yeah, that's good beard for 2 years. Good job. Okay. But really well done video. Who did it for you?
Sabrina McAllister. She's quarter section creative. So she's a farm girl, grew up on a farm, and they're still a farm family. And so she totally got the vision, and she was kind of the brains behind that.
And it looks good, and it fits with the overall theme. We're going to talk about the overall theme in a bit, but it all fits, and it all fits within the package that you've created for the distillery itself. I'm wondering how we went from brewer to distiller, though. So. And stick with me. So you're in your garage. You're there for a year. You decide you can do it because what did you have to distill to become a distiller or brewer? Was it 500,000 liters? Is that what it was originally before they changed it?
Yeah, it was something like that. It was like a huge number. So
massive thing. So you start doing it in your garage. not nearly 500,000 liters, maybe 500. I don't know, something like that.
No, we grew up 50 liters at a time. The original system in the garage was. It was a 50-liter brew house. So,
And mine's a 20 hitting back there, but I've got 2 of them going, so I can do 40 at a time, and that's fun. I don't know if I can make a go of it, but you obviously did. Who started purchasing your product right away, or who did you go out to and kind of peddle it to?
like just the local community. I mean, at the time and still today, we're so thankful for the local support we have in Red Deer. The people here are just phenomenal as far as supporting local and small beverage companies. And so we just got started like most small breweries, just going to the local businesses and saying, hey, you want to give us a shot?
And it went well, obviously. And
it went. Yeah. So sorry, just to cut in, like in 2016, we were the first Alberta brewery in 20 years to win an award at the World Beer Cup.
Okay.
So that was in the States. So Garrett put himself and our brewery on the map and highlighted the quality of Alberta products. And so, at the beginning, it went really well.
And what beer was that, Garrett? Do you remember?
That was for our brown ale, Open Road.
Ah, perfect. And you know what? I've got a picture of Open Road because you have Open Road with, not here. Let's go up. Open Road. Sorry. I don't think it's not going. Open Road with another right there. So there's Open Road. And you have that with, what is that with? Meaning Creek. Good. And did you put Meaning Creek in an Open Road barrel? Is that, you said it's, well,
So,
if we look at this, it just says it's inspired by it, but did you have one in the barrel of the other at one point?
what happened was we designed the Meeting Creek whiskey around the malts used in Open Road brown ale, brewed that whiskey, distilled it, aged it, and once we took the whiskey out of the barrel, we put Open Road back into the barrel and barrel aged the Open Road in whiskey that was inspired by itself.
So let's go, and we're connecting the beer and the whiskey at the same time, and I think that's important because that's kind of your background. It's where you are, and it's how you think, and the types of whiskeys you make, because you're not limiting yourself to one type. We're gonna talk about the range that you're kind of looking towards in the future in a second, but you went from beer to whiskey, and how did that conversation go? Charlie, is this an idea you came up with, or were you pressured by Garrett to actually do it? I'm wondering who was kind of the little voice there saying, go ahead, do it. Spend all that money.
I don't know. I think Garrett and I are bad for each other in a lot of ways because we have all these great ideas that, hey, let's do this. What if we did that? And one day it was just like, it kind of was like a light bulb moment. It's like, hey, like, we're already making beer. We can make wash. Let's just buy a still, and it's kind of a similar process. Let's just do it. So we did it.
All right. So you're talking to each other. You're prodding each other. You decide to do it. Who did you speak with? Because I'm sure you went to someone out there trying to nail down the feasibility of opening. Like, I'm talking about the space needed, or maybe you already had the space because you have a large space right now. But I don't know if you developed further back. The equipment, the barrels, the timelines, and the costs for every one of those things. Who did you talk to kind of wrap your head around the idea?
The voices in my head. I had good
That's
long
it.
discussions with those. And, looking back, it's hilarious how some of the decisions we made in the beginning were kind of frivolous and crazy and weird and just like random, but they were fueled by that passion and excitement for doing something that could become bigger than ourselves. And so, I ordered the still. And then 2 months after it had been on order, I informed the fire department, and they're like, you can't put a still in that building. What are you thinking? So we didn't think
I'm thinking I want a still is what I want. It's like, okay.
So why not?
So you brought them in to tell you what to do to fix it, and then you further developed something, or did you have to?
We had to hire an engineer, and he had to develop a special room, and we had to get like a special variance done up. And so there's a whole big rigmarole and a bunch of extra costs. But the original idea was just like start small, see where it goes, have some fun with it, play around, because neither of us knew what we were doing. And sometimes I wonder if either of us know what we're doing still today. But that's part of the fun, right? You just make it up as you go. And I have a lot of faith in Garrett to figure this stuff out, which he's done. So, just good old-fashioned passion.
I think it's perfect because I'm a home brewer, and a bit of a distiller, although I'm not supposed to say that. But everything is great because you mess something up, you distill it. You mess something up while distilling, which is hard to do, you can distill it again. There's so many things you can do to kind of fix or just use it and be really creative off the cuff. And that's why I think you two are doing. You're just being a little bit creative right off the cuff. Necessity is forcing you to just like, let's try this. Might as well. We've got 200 liters of this wash. Let's figure something out. Did you have to expand? Because I've been to the brew house and your distillery portion of it. Did you have to, I don't know, jig something up? Did you have to evaluate how much room you needed in the back and off to the side? Like, is that the expansion? It went where it was, the original, and then kind of off to as you're walking into the right?
Yeah, I think as we started, our building has 4 units, and so we started with unit 1, and then we took over unit 2, and then that's where the still is, in kind of the back of unit 2, and we just kind of had room at the time, and so we stuck it back there, and that's kind of where the special wall would fit for the fire kind of piece of it.
Okay.
And then we quickly ran out of room, so we had to take over unit 3 and 4, and now we have absolutely no room, and wondering why we put a still back there, but we're still so happy we did.
And where are you putting these things? Well, all your extra barrels that you're getting and buying and filling now, you're going to run out of room at one point. Where are they going?
We've already had to build a separate warehouse off-site because the fire regulations, it's challenging to store that much alcohol on site. So a lot of that's stored off-site, and that building is filling up quickly. So exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Well, you're just going to have to sell more. That's it. That's your job, right, Charlie. You get out there and start selling. Or is it your job? Who do you have selling for you? Because you do a lot of legwork, but do you have someone else helping you with that?
With Henge, we don't. So like the business, we have multiple different brands, and the beer, we have a hard iced tea, we've got gin. And so with Henge, we've just started kind of really small just to kind of make sure we were on the right foot. And then as we further develop it, the plan would be to kind of beef up that sales team and the marketing team more.
Garrett, university, Olds College, when you're there, you learned how to brew and distill, or just brew?
It was focused on brewing. We did do a tour of Alberta Distillers, so I'd seen some aspects of it, thankfully.
That place is massive, right? It's 50 acres. Okay. So so where do you learn to distill, dear? Where did you go take a course for a week? Did you stay there? Did you have a lot of friends in the industry you could kind of hook on to maybe?
I definitely asked people questions, read a lot of books, kind of did some self-educating, and then Charlie sent me on a couple courses, so I got to travel to a few different distilleries and see how they do it and try and inform how we wanted to move forward.
And how long did it take you to get used to your still, your specific one? Like, how many runs did you do until you felt comfortable kind of manipulating stuff a little bit to make it the way you want it?
Yeah, our first few runs, like we approached it very analytically, like mason jars to do all the cuts and just figure out exactly where those points were. But even then, we started with vodka for a long time before we decided anything was of the quality we wanted for our whiskey program. Vodka is a really great way to learn the process, challenge yourself to make a clean, clear spirit. And once we were happy with what we were getting, then we jumped in right into whiskey.
And you know what? I don't have a picture of your still. I should have done that. Thinking back, it'd just be nice to talk about that and look at it. Where did you get the still, Charlie? Where did you order it?
So, it was a tough thing trying to do the research and figure out where to start. And we ended up ordering a G still from Poland.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a Franken still. It looks like a scary beast. But Garrett has tamed it, and it obeys him now. So
does what he wants. Excellent.
Exactly.
And so let's get into the marketing, because we have the brewery, and what would you say your marketing focus was as a brewery? Because you brewed beer, you liked the beer, you developed certain beers that you liked, but what was your kind of vision with it? Because you said troubled monk, so let's go back there a little bit before we start with the branding for Henge. How did Troubled Monk develop as a branding image for you?
Well, I mean, naming a brewery is, I think, harder than naming a child, because it's got to kind of stand that test of time through all the consumers' eyes. And so we wanted to come up with a name that was unique and it's quirky. So monks have a long history in brewing beer. A lot of monasteries even today sustain themselves from beer. And so we wanted to bring some of that rich history into the present. And our monk is troubled because he's troubled with perfection. He likes to work hard, play hard, and he gets himself into trouble a little bit. But that's kind of how the Troubled Monk came about, that name.
Okay. And the beers that you had at first, like I know the range now, but when you first came out, were they heavier, bigger beers? And that's why I was thinking like monastery. So those types of beers, usually they could be heavy, 10, 11, 12%. And when I was in Belgium visiting the monasteries there, they were always massive, especially around Christmas time. They did Christmas beers at 18%. Were you guys producing hefty beers at that time? Like, did that fit into that kind of view, kind of picture?
From the recipe standpoint, we didn't want to like shoehorn ourselves into a particular subset of styles. We wanted to produce the things we wanted to drink. So
Got it.
A lot of the classics like a pale ale, a brown ale, a golden ale. But we did have a Belgian-inspired saison, and did those big projects were more seasonal offerings that we just do once and move on to the next new thing to learn.
Do you do a barley wine in the winter?
We've done a couple different ones. We don't have one at the moment, but we did do it a few times. Those were big, big hefty beers.
Well, I love them. I do. It's my favorite to make. Actually, my Doppelbock, I call it Doffelbock, but it's my Doppelbock's my favorite. But then after that, it's the big hefty barley wines I like, the 11, 12%. And trying to do that on my Brewzilla with 20 liters, you're maxing out with 20 pounds of grain in that thing. You're barely moving stuff. It's a mess, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful beer. And so from there, you have that image. And going from that to Grain Henge, did you want something that was similar? Were you trying to connect it, or did you just go completely off to the production and everything you do? And if you look at the video, it's beautiful. It focuses on the prairies. It focuses on Central Alberta, if we want to call it. I call it Central Alberta. Are you Central Alberta, or is Edmonton Central Alberta? We're kind of in the middle, but they call us north. But then there's Fort Mac, Grand Prairie, everything else. I feel like we're central. You're kind of central south, but whatever. So you're focusing on that and the beauty of that. And here, I've also got something here from you guys online. Here, not that one. Not that one. Although that's I like it. And you talk about innovation, breaking barriers. I like that. There. This one, our story. So rich history of grain elevators, abandoned wood structures, iconic symbols of the prairies. Now, that's kind of your image if you have this. And if you look at your, the barrels behind you, but if we're looking at the bottles themselves, the naming of the bottles, everything seems to have a kind of central theme to it that you've developed, which I like. So it's cohesive everywhere you look. How did you go from Troubled Monk to Grain Henge as a view? Or do you just want to take off differently and just say, we're focusing on the prairies type thing?
I think the thing is with alcohol, everyone, everyone, the person drinking gin or vodka is different than the person drinking beer, is different than the person drinking whiskey. And so we wanted to make sure that we could create a story around each of our products that spoke to the person who was going to drink it. And so it's kind of like Troubled Monk is the mom and dad, and then the children went off and wanted to do their own things a little differently, but still inspired by what their parents taught them. Okay. And so, our vision at the brewery that we have hanging on our wall is inspiring others through our craft. And so it's important to us to kind of portray that feeling that we have for our products on our bottles. And I think with Grain Henge, we just were so kind of intrigued by this concept of mystery, which is the henge piece, and old grain elevators and people gathering and working together, and the harvest and high quality grain, and it kind of explained good quality whiskey. It's like, how does this happen? But boy, it sure is good when it does, kind of thing. So that's kind of how it all kind of wrapped together.
Nice. And let's go from there to the bottle names. So Elevator Row, is there an actual elevator row in Red Deer where you got several grain elevators in a row? There was one in the picture. It seemed like several, but I don't know if that was doctored not in the video. So is there an elevator row as an area?
Yeah, so we were trying to incorporate some of the stories that we have in our whiskey into the names. Elevator Row, the malt bill for that is inspired by our pale ale Pesky Pig, named after a pig named Francis who escaped from an abattoir near Elevator Row, where the row of elevators were here in Red Deer. So using that malt bill to inspire the whiskey, we thought we could tie in the name and hence Elevator Row.
And I've got your first batch here. What can you remember about your first batch of Elevator Row? Because I'm liking it, I enjoy it. And if you go online, everyone had great things to say about it when this first came out. I waited because I was going to do Elevator Row 1, 2, and 3, but I decided let's just break this open now. And memories of it. What are you thinking?
We were exploring the idea that whiskey was more than just a commodity grain distilled to make alcohol. We thought that the grain that grew around us and was tended by the farmers and the maltsters was world class, and we could take that knowledge and inspiration that we've been putting into our beer and get that into the spirit. And I just remember being very, very satisfied that the special characters of the malt were there in the end. We got character from the barrel as well, but just it all came together very luckily, like we intended. So.
When you're trying to choose or decide if it was ready to put out, I know you're testing it over time. Are you and Charlie having discussions? I like this, don't like this. I want to wait for this. Let's get this out. Let's make some money. No, wait. I'm wondering how this conversation went for this because this was your very, very first, correct?
Meeting Creek was our first.
Meeting Creek 1 is your first. Okay. Elevator Row came after that. All right. So let's go back to Meeting Creek 1 then. So batch 1, Meeting Creek. What's the conversation like before you're putting that out? And how long did it take you before you thought it might be ready until you were positive it was ready?
So actually, Charlie and I have been very honest with our opinion about the whiskey from day one. We wanted something that could be ready, before 12 years so that we could start making some money. And so we made decisions along the way to aid that. But the conversation was always, it's not going in the bottle until it's ready.
Garrett, being humble, I represent more the business side, and Garrett represents more the quality, and he's the brains behind everything that tastes good here. And so we've always had this rule that, like, I'm not going to push product that isn't good because we don't want to get a reputation as being a bad beverage producer, brewery, distillery. And so the discussion really went, Garrett, is it ready? And he said, yeah, I think it's ready. So I said, awesome, let's do it. So these decisions are in his hands.
So Garrett, then back to you. Meeting Creek, what were you looking for or waiting for before it went out? Because I've had some, whiskey off the still. So I've had the White Lightning all the way up to some very fine whiskeys. I'm wondering where you decided, what were you looking for before you put out your whiskey?
So from the day it came off the still, this particular whiskey had a lot of like the chocolate notes from the specialty malts that we were using. So there was more complexity in it, and I wanted to make sure that it stayed at the forefront, but was properly supported and kind of melded with the other flavors that were there. And then just a smoothness so that I could enjoy drinking it the way it was and just fully appreciate all the complexity. So not having made whiskey before, we had no idea how long that would take. And you try it after a year or a year and a half, and you're like, oh boy, I have no idea like how long this is going to take. Yeah. And then once we got really close to that 3-year mark, it actually surprised me. I figured this would be probably a 5-year thing to get what I had in my mind. And then all of a sudden it just started coming together, and what I was tasting and putting different barrels of different chard together and really finding that furthered the melding of flavors in a way that I was happy with. It just, when it came together, I was excited and ready, and it's like, let's get this out and see what people think.
Excellent. Well, and you kind of want that too, because that's your first one, right? You want to know what other people. Yeah, I can see that. Was it char number 4?
On the first release, I want to say it was a number 2 char and a number 4 char, if I remember correctly.
Okay. So a number 2 char, number 4, you're trying to get the different flavors coming from the barrels. Good. And how many did you put out?
So we combined the 2 barrels and bottled them. I don't remember that.
400 bottles ish,
something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So, and it was lovely. It came out at, was it 3.5 years that you put it out?
Yeah, it was over 3, but under 4 for sure. So it is around that.
Okay. So let's say 3.5, char 2, char 3. And can you tell us what the mash bill is? Because you do mash bills just like you do your beer. So you're not doing the blending part, just the 2 different whiskeys to blend, but actual mash bill. So what was in the mash bill? Because it was Pesky Pig.
So this one was inspired by Open Road. So it was a more complex malt bill. So the 2 row that we get from RAR in Alex. And then we have amber malt, brown malt, chocolate malt, and then a couple different kinds of crystal malt in it as well.
Makes it expensive.
It does
as well, right? Because you're talking about malts. The 2 row, everyone makes sense. You go. Let's talk yeast as well. Do you remember the yeast that you used for this? Is it the same?
At this point, we moved on to USW6 was the yeast that we're using predominantly now.
Yeah. And in the brew house, will you use a different yeast there and then maybe go back to this yeast for the whiskey if you're going to experiment a little bit? Or will you just keep it consistent for batches just to make life easier?
So it's really dependent on the project. If I'm making a wash that I think is going to become Meeting Creek, I will stay with this yeast. But I will experiment with different yeast strains to see what they can offer. We're just finding so much actually comes through after distillation. It's worth that journey of exploration. So.
And elevator row, what's the mash bill in this?
It's again our 2 row malt and then a bunch of dark Munich malt in that one.
Okay. Vienna as well, or was it just strictly Munich in there?
Dark Munich in this one, yeah.
Okay. And are you still playing with the char? Are you still sticking with like a 2 char, 4 char? Do you have an array of different chars that you're possibly thinking about as you're brewing and thinking, I want to try this with this as it comes out? Or if something comes out and you're trying your new make, it's like, maybe I don't want to put this in a 4. Let's have this character stand out a bit and we'll put it in a 2. Do you have an idea already, or do you change your mind after you distill maybe?
I definitely have evolved my thinking as I'm tasting product that's approaching 3, 4, 5 years of age. And I will decide when it's coming off the still, do I think this would do better in a 2 or a 3, and make decisions like that. There's lots of experimentation involved, but as we're starting to taste more of our product, I think we're feeling more confident about those decisions early on and what they're going to give us in the end.
Excellent. Charlie, are you buying the barrels, or are you leaving that up to him as well?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of the one buying the barrels, but obviously Garrett's kind of, we get them from a cooperage in Kentucky, and he helps me decide on what char obviously we're going to get and stuff like that when I order them. So he's deciding. I'm just ordering it.
Okay. All right. Okay. And let's go back to Whiskey Drop. You're here. Do you remember when that was? You came to Edmonton, went to Whiskey Drop. Was that early summer, maybe? June?
Yeah, the spring-ish, I want to say. Spring, summer, yeah.
All right. I missed a lot of it, but I got there. I tried some, and I brought some of these home, which I'm glad I had now. And I was surprised by the number of expressions that you showed us that night. I really was, because we're thinking new distillery. We're thinking 2 or 3 expressions. And you had, I think you presented 6, but still had 2 or 3 also in the background that I got to try afterwards. So I'm wondering, what's your goal when it comes to different expressions? Are you intending on developing 2 or 3 base expressions, whiskey row, elevator row, and then other things that might come up, like the Alliance that I have here or the Arrowwood? Or are you thinking in the future you're going to maybe do different batches and not care? Just kind of go off and do really funky things completely out there?
Well, part of the problem is whiskey takes 3 years to become whiskey, and Charlie and I are both bad for just following new tangents and new ideas and feeding off each other that way. And we come from a brewing background where seasonal releases in a brewery are frequent and just keep coming at you. So some of that definitely carried over into our distilling. I think some of those brands are going to stick around. We'll have consistent expressions. But I'm just so curious about the whole process, about the ingredients. And I think there's a lot of play that we've been doing that we're excited about. And we're still trying to figure out, how do we share that? What does that look like? But we've got the spirit to play with, so we're pretty happy about that.
Okay, so you're still making your decisions as you go type thing.
Yeah, totally. I think so. Totally making our decisions as we go. We wanted to start with just like having fun and playing around and seeing what happens. And as we grow and develop, we might kind of come up with some regulars, or we might just keep on doing single batch releases. But we're still kind of in that early, like a lot of these distilleries and throughout the world are so old compared to us. Like we're just at those early years of figuring out who we want to become,
You're a craft distiller. That's what you are.
Exactly.
Embrace it. It's fun. You get to do stuff that the big guys don't. JP Wises would love to just drop everything and do something very neat, but they can't. It's the market that dictates what they're going to do. And they're still manipulating certain things within the market, and marketing helps us do that. But you can change on a dime if you want to. If you want to change your whole branding tomorrow, be expensive for you. But you could do it if you really wanted to. So there's positives to it. And let's go to the positives of being linked with a brewery to start. So how did that help you? Not just the fact that you have 3 or 4 brewers there that know how to brew your mash to do the whiskey, but how else did being a brewery kind of give you a leg up on other people out there that were not brewers to start off with?
So one thing I've learned talking from, there's very intelligent and very experienced distillers, but to some people who are making very tasty products, the fermentation thing is kind of magic and a mystery. So having that understanding and being able to manipulate and control things from the sourcing of our ingredients right through the brewing process, there's definitely advantages to that. And we're making decisions for a whiskey like at the recipe stage, trying to make changes there before it even touches the still. So having that complete knowledge, I think, is a big advantage for us.
And how good are you now at manipulating your mash bill and coming up off the still with what you're imagining should be there? Are you hitting like 95% of what you want every time you're distilling, or every once in a while something kind of wacky happens and you have to adapt to that?
So things that we've done before and we've brewed a few times, we're very consistent and controlled on. But then I get weird ideas and it's like, what does this taste like? And I have an idea, and then we have to react at the different stages as we find out what that tastes like. So so far nothing has been terribly surprising, but we definitely have to adapt and make the best decisions we can with how it's moving along.
There's good surprises too. Just saying you got surprised didn't mean it was bad. I've brewed some stuff and I've thrown some things in that I didn't know if I should at the time, and it came out fantastic, and I've used it ever since. Type thing. How about oats? Do you ever use oats? And I'm just thinking about brewing because I just started using oats probably 3 years ago, and I love it. But I'm wondering if you do.
None of our things that have been released so far contain oats.
Okay.
I would love to do some exploration using strictly oats and see what that gives us. Just there's only so little time to get all these ideas out. I don't have a ton of experience with it, but that's also why I want to try it.
I can't remember if you guys do a rye beer or not, so I'm wondering if you've done rye beer and how much rye you've experimented with in these.
So we have done seasonals with rye and gone over 50% with the rye. The Arrowwood sample that you have is 100% rye.
Right there.
Yeah.
And this is not as spicy as I thought it was going to be. Did it come out the way you expected it?
So yeah, we were using malted rye and flaked rye for this recipe.
Okay.
And it definitely is a different character once it's distilled than you get from the beer or the wash.
Okay.
But I'm very happy with it. Yeah, lots of people talk about the spiciness, and I find like that hot spiciness is maybe not there, but I still get the tingly sensation and kind of like a candied sensation from the rye. So I'm really happy with how that's come through.
And I agree. And it's like a confectioner sugar for the rye, the sweetness, which I like. And I love rye. Rye, and it's hard. I'm president of the Alberta Scotch Society, but rye is probably my favorite drink. It is. And I've just got a connection with it. And this is also floral, and it's fruity. And it doesn't have the telltale kind of dill that they're looking for so often at so many craft distilleries or in the States. And I loved it at first, and it puts me off. And this not having it made me really, really happy as I'm having it. So this, you did a really good job with this rye. And I'm wondering where you got your rye, because Red Shed doesn't do that, and neither does Roar, I don't think, right?
Correct. So we source this from Canada Malting in Calgary.
Okay. Oh, so are you piggybacking off of Alberta Distillers? Like, do you have a relationship with them and you can get
no, these are malts that are available for brewers. So using those same connections we use to get malt for our beer.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that they were in Alberta Distillers people. Okay. I could be wrong. And we're stuck. Let's stay with the grains. What's the funkiest, weirdest, I don't want to say most expensive because that's not important, but the grain that you would use in a beer that you would not eat, people wouldn't think about using in a whiskey. What have you used there, do you think? Because being a brewery really lends you the fact that you get to experiment with stuff that they're not thinking about because you're thinking in brewers' terms, right?
Right. I mean, even our first release with Meeting Creek having crystal malts and chocolate malts is just not that common of a thing. And when I get a malt that makes me excited, my first thoughts is, what would this taste like as a whiskey? So we've taken some Red Shed biscuit malt, which is just one of my favorite malts of all time. Of course, I had to make a whiskey with that. So that's aging right now. You know, that we've had a lot of opportunities to work with some just stunning ingredients. So I want to share how those are coming along so bad.
And two things that I'm excited about is Garrett did a terroir experiment. So we made whiskey with the same grain from 3 different regions of Alberta, same recipe, and it's aging away. So we'll see how that impacts the flavor. So that's pretty cool and exciting. That's inspired, I think, from our brewing curiosity. And then
I'm wondering if you'll put out like a 250 mil, 250 mils side by side to see if you could see the difference, kind of thing. Because I'd buy that in a second.
We haven't decided that part yet, but
okay, all right.
It's to be determined. But then the other one is we took some sour beer that was a number of years old, and we've distilled that. So it's like a 3-year-old beer turning it into at least a 3-year-old whiskey, which could be pretty cool too.
And I've done that with a really funky beer that just went nuts, sour, almost rancid for me. Distilled it, although I'm not supposed to do that. It was one of my most unique and something I thought was really cool, actually. So just playing with stuff when you can, it makes me happy, and should make you happy too. So you're a brewery into a distillery. There's advantages. Are there any disadvantages to being a brewery / distillery? I'm wondering if there's something that kind of works against you somehow.
Well, a lot of our equipment is built for making beers. So some of the more common practices in distilleries, we just aren't equipped to handle. So we don't do any distillation on the grain. We have to do a traditional mash lauter to get the liquid into our kettle.
Okay.
So there are some limitations just with our equipment and the processes that we're set up for.
That's more time and effort than flavor profile change, though, right? So, or do you think it might change it?
So I think that it does have an impact. So there's some things that will always make our spirit different than somebody who is producing on the grain. Not to say one is better than the other, but I believe that there's going to be an impact from that.
And let's go back to rye for a second. So you're using enzymes. Have you used different types of enzymes from different companies to see if there's a different flavor?
Different flavor, and also just for the being humane to our brewers, because 100% rye is a nasty, nasty thing to have to brew with.
It is.
So what is effective in the distillery? What can save us from having a 14-hour brew day? And how does it taste? Are we happy with the results, both performance-wise and flavor-wise?
And so I'm going to go to two brewers. I've talked about this with them a lot because they do rye, but they do a lot of rye beers every year. So they use a lot of rice husks. And I'm wondering if you use that with the enzymes. And have you tried one just the husks and not the enzymes and kind of went back and forth? I'm wondering.
Yeah, we do use the rice hulls. It's a big aid, but we've also done it with next to no rice hulls and just the enzymes.
Yeah.
Flavor of the beer was very similar, but the physical pain of brewing was significantly increased. So
And not worth it. Okay. For me, the gumminess isn't so bad when I use the rye. It's the cleanup with the burning because it just chars so quickly for me.
You have an element inside, yeah.
It just and I can see how you would want to stay away from that. But I did want to know. And I talked to Caitlin Quinn from Eau Claire, and she did one batch ever. And she said, I'm never doing it ever again. And I bought several because I really liked it. So I still got several. And I think she's thinking about doing another one soon. But I keep asking people because I want to know if there is really a difference depending on the enzymes, because it seems like maybe not, because really it's just coating so that it can move properly amongst themselves and break down the sugars faster and more evenly. So I didn't know if there would be something to actually change the flavor in that, but I was kind of hoping that you, playing with it as a brewer, you would have seen something maybe that kind of popped up.
The biggest impact we just see is how effective is at changing the viscosity of the mash and what our final actual extract coming out of it is. But even just a different amount of extract coming out will affect the flavor. It's different amount of food for the yeast, and it'll handle it differently. So kind of indirectly more, I would say that you'll have different results from different enzymes.
Okay. All right. Let's get off the rye. I know it's my thing, but it's not everyone's thing. And I want to get Charlie into this conversation. Charlie, are you where you thought you would be 5 years later? Is this where you thought, if you said, this is the minimum, did you surpass the minimum? And are you on the trajectory that you think you wanted to be?
I don't know. I mean, I get asked that question and I have no idea how to answer it. Sometimes I think it's like that choose your own adventure book. And you know you're going to read a good book and you know it's going to take you some time and you know you're going to enjoy it, but you really have no idea how it's going to go. And so you look back and think at every kind of time you had a chance to make a decision and you go different directions. And so I think that I'm pretty happy with the team that we put together. I think we've done some awesome things and I think we have some really great opportunities ahead. So I'm really excited about that. But when we started the brewery 8 years ago, if you said we'd, be making hard iced tea and whiskey, I think I would have said, "Whoa, okay, sounds great," but that's a surprise.
It's making money. All right, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, further question to that then. Let's say you're on the same trajectory. You're making the same amount of money. It's going up at the same level over the next 10 years. What would you possibly like to do? Are you changing venues? Are you getting more hardware? Are you buying more wood? What's kind of your next thing once you're 10 years into your whiskeys? And then your whiskeys, well, no, you're 5 years into whiskey. Once your whiskey hits about 15 years, I'm wondering where you think you want to be as a distillery and brewery.
Well, I think the goal is always like that incremental, strong growth, right? Like you want to grow as quick as you can without growing too fast, because growing too fast causes a whole bunch of problems. And the reality of this business, it's just ridiculously capital intensive. So you know that it's got to be like a long and steady grind, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, the goal would be to get our products into as many mouths as we can, and hopefully that means outside of Alberta and outside of Canada. And so from the whiskey, there's a really great opportunity. I feel so strongly that Alberta has this great opportunity to become a world-class whiskey destination, much like Scotch or bourbon or Irish or Japanese whiskey. We make great grain here. We've got great water. We could put us on the map. And so I think over the next 10 or 15 years, with the other smaller Alberta whiskey distilleries that are popping up, we have an opportunity to show the world what we can make of. So that would be one of my big goals. And then again, kind of for the other brands, it'd be similar, is just to continue to grow that market share and get me more people drinking Troubled Monk.
Excellent. How about you, Garrett? If you were able to nudge him and say, we're going to have this much money over the next 10 years, and you knew exactly what was going to happen, what would you say would make your life happier?
I'm always going to ask for opportunities to play, but I've been so very fortunate to have that all along. So if anything like that continues, I'm just going to be a happy guy.
All right. And let's make this last question. And then actually, no, after this one, tell me about Alliance Whiskey. What was in the mash bill of Alliance? Because I can't remember this one actually whatsoever.
So Alliance release number 1 is our corn whiskey. So
Okay.
it's corn with a little bit of barley and a little bit of rye.
And that's the 56.6%, right? Your first one?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so this is your blend.
But I got to put, like with Alliance,
Yep.
it's a exclusive bottle pick by Ryan Engen at Wine and Beyond.
Okay.
And so Alliance 1, he came to the shop and we tasted a bunch of whiskeys, and he said, okay, that one. And then they did it exclusively there. And so that's hence the name. Alliance is the name of a grain elevator, and it also kind of represents the relationship we have, right? So the Alliance. And so Alliance number 2 is coming out
Okay.
very soon, and it's another bottle pick by Ryan Engen. And it's going to be a little bit different than Alliance 1, but it's going to be out at the end of November, and it'll be exclusively at Wine and Beyond as well.
Nice. And I've picked whiskey with Ryan, and we did that for the Alberta Scotch site. We picked ours, and it was a Gordon MacPhail, and we were in a room, and we had all these samples trying to decide. What does Ryan do when he's picking a barrel? Does he go to your place and Garrett, you're jumping up back and forth, tasting out of this one, tasting out of that one? Or I'm wondering if you have stuff prepared for him that you think is great, or is it kind of an off the cuff, get to know what he's kind of looking for, and then kind of jumping around trying to let him taste 15, 20 barrels and get him drunk and just make sure he buys one of your barrels?
We always start with a little bit of structure. We think we're going to be smart about it, but then once you start having a couple samples and talking about it and find out what gets other people excited, and you get off on a tangent, it's like, oh, then you got to try this one over here, and all of a sudden you're tapping more, and
I love those sessions because, like, you know, Ryan's a great guy and he's so fun to talk to, and so we'll just sit in the barrel warehouse, which smells amazing, and BS for a few hours and taste some whiskeys and say, hey, what about this one over here? And then poor Garrett has to like run around looking for it because he's like, I think it's in this row, and he'll grab a sample and bring it down to us, and we'll taste it, and it's just a really cool, relaxing afternoon.
Those are very fun afternoons. I enjoy them.
Yeah.
I have fun. And as long as someone's driving home for me, it's really good, because if you're having just the smallest little sip, it's like, no, you want a little bit more, because I don't know, 1/8 of an ounce is really not enough for me to get an idea of the whiskey. I'm still looking at 1/4 to maybe half might be too much when you're trying several, but you still want something in your mouth, coating the whole thing, and then getting another sip of it. So yeah, those are great afternoons, but you have to be careful, right? Especially they're all cask strength, obviously, and so you're sitting at, most of your casks are coming out at what, 60, 62?
So not only have we experimented with char, but our entry proof has been a big experimentation field for us. So quite a range. Some things are going in closer to that 62%. A lot of them a little lower in that 55 to 56%. Finding that certain spirits in certain barrels respond better at different entry proofs, and trying to put that into our decision-making process right from the still.
You're dry there, so you're losing more water than alcohol. So it's going up in ABV as well. So how much is it going up, Jen? Is it the same amount? Are you going up 2% if it goes in at 62 as if it goes in at 54, or does it go up a little bit less depending on how much water's already in there? If you know,
I wish it was more linear like that, but it really is very barrel dependent more than anything. So how tight the barrel was when it was made, the quality of the wood, where in the warehouse it is.
And you've got your hot spots, your cold spots in the warehouse as well. You know them pretty well.
Yeah, starting to taste those for sure. Yeah.
Nice. All right. And the very last question, this is what I wanted. I just want to know where you guys, do you think that there's a taste that's common with new Canadian whiskey? What I mean by new Canadian whiskey is by micro distillers like you guys, because I think when I taste certain whiskeys that have been around for a long time, the different companies, there's kind of a common Canadian flavor to it with the really well done ones. I'm wondering if there's going to be something like that coming out for Western Canadian whiskeys. Will they all, with the micro distillers, have kind of a common flavor? I know you guys have several flavor profiles, and I don't know the whiskeys enough yet to be able to blind taste grain Henge and pick it out. I can do that with a couple distilleries, and several of them that I'm talking about in when we're in Banff, where I can pick it up because there's just some note that just keeps coming through. But beyond that, do you think that there's something with Canadian distilleries that might unify them, where people can say, yeah, it's like a Western Canadian whiskey as opposed to the States, or going down in the single malts in the States?
That's a really interesting question, and I think that I hope there will be is where I'm at right now. A lot of the smaller distilleries, I think, have the opportunity to focus more on the flavors and the intensity of the flavor. Instead of trying to create something with broader appeal, we can really focus on the ingredients and how they're going to express themselves.
Okay. Good answer. Charlie, do you think? I'm going to put you on the spot because it's the last one. I want to hear something from you.
Yeah, I would say the same as Garrett. It's actually a really interesting question, because I think it would probably be better for the industry if we had a bit of a commonality, in the sense that it would make us stick together and we can stand out in our own way. But I think it's just going to take time to see, because the industry is still so young, right? Like we're only going to know that answer 5 or 10 years from now.
And that's what I was going to say as a kind of ending thought to that. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 15, they'll all come together with some type of unifying element to it. Once the ones that have started are around for 15 years and have lasted those 15 years, right? Because it's a shame, but distilleries do come and go after 3-5 years and they don't make it. So the ones that do stick around for the 10, 15, 20 years, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen at one point, what we're all going to look like. So I'm looking forward to that. So I've got to thank both of you for coming on tonight. This has been fun. I've got to ask a lot of questions I didn't get to ask when you came here at Whiskey Drop, which I'm usually the annoying guy on the side that keeps asking question. And I try not to. My wife always pokes me and says, just like, let other people talk. But I was glad that I had you two here for me to kind of throw all the questions out. I'm going to leave the last comments up to you, though, Charlie and Garrett. Is there something that you would like that we didn't talk about tonight that you'd like to say? So, Charlie, let's go with you, then Garrett, and then I'll wrap it up.
I mean, yeah, I guess the only thing is like we're really excited about that. Our first 5-year whiskey, which is going to be Alliance 2. It's coming out at the end of November, running and barrel pick. So I'm really just excited to see what everyone thinks of that. Yeah.
Is that possibly what might come to Banff with you?
Well, in Garrett and my fashion, we'll probably wake up the morning of the show and decide what we want to bring back. Actually, I think Garrett's going to bring some crazy stuff that isn't even in a bottle yet. So you might get a real special treat.
I like that. Makes me happy. All right, Garrett. Anything that we didn't cover tonight that you would have liked to cover? Something I didn't ask?
Not really that comes to mind. I think that we're just having a lot of fun exploring the ingredients and kind of what Western Canada has to offer for the entire spectrum of whiskey, from like the beginning of the concept right through to pouring it in a glass. It's just an exciting time, and we're learning so much, and we're just happy that people want to learn with us.
Perfect ending note, gentlemen. So thank you very much. Cheers to all of you. I will see you both in 3 weeks, just about 3 weeks. So hopefully I'll see you on Friday night, and we'll do some fun stuff. And Saturday, definitely, I'm going to see you at 1:00. And I'm looking forward to it. Oh, and a couple little comments there on the side. I should have put those. When people write in live, I like to do it because it's usually afterwards that I'm responding to them. Cheers, everybody. Have a fantastic night. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
See you later. Cheers.